Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. It is me once again, screaming into the void of the internet. It's been a couple of days since I recorded a video. Nothing really changed much. Just the usual wage cage and get home and all that good stuff. But I kind of want to talk about something that happened essentially, not too long ago in the grand scheme. I had just got off from, my, off day. And then next day, as per usual, I'm just getting ready to, get ready for the usual, work that's coming up because I had been asked to come in early. And my roommate, she was cooking, and so I just kind of made casual conversation. But over the course of the conversation, I'm not gonna, share what it was about. But I noticed that she kind of started choking up on her words, and she essentially kind of like emotionally broke down. And she kind of like cried on me for a bit. And so we talked. And I kind of want to make this because this is not what it sounds like. Yeah, I hope you're not thinking that I'm trying to like make moves on her or anything. But, often in this doomer space and black pill space, even though, again, I am 100% male first and centric and stuff like that, like, I am mainly concerned about guys. I do think that, unfortunately, too many of us in a certain aspect kind of forget to be human sometimes, you know? You'd be like, hey, listen, that guy's good looking, so he has like, if there's any problems with him, it's just terrible. Like he doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, if he's depressed or he's miserable, like f him because he has something I don't have. And especially with the chicks, like oh, like they're just slam pigs and stuff like that. So I don't really feel bad for them, and I don't deny that some of that is true, right? But for me personally, unless I again know this person and I know that they're doing vile, slimy stuff, I don't very much care to see people in positions like that. And while, yes, some guys would probably take advantage of that to, like, show that they're, a reliable person to hopefully hover around her until, they can make a move. I kind of just said, hey, if you kind of need to talk about stuff, hit me up. And the reason that I did that is because similar to what I say to people here, stuff like that, even though like people don't always share, but there have been a few of you guys that have shared, you know, I don't turn away from people when they show humanity. You know, we are living in a world where it just seems like everyone is just trying to just be very self-centered and just focused on whatever makes you feel good and feel happy, even if it's someone's detriment, right? So when I do see humanity, I acknowledge it and I reward it accordingly. I mentioned one night where we were talking, and my female coworker, when I mentioned a few things, like she started crying, and it wasn't because of anything from her. She was crying because of me. And I was like, yeah, it feel when I mentioned to her like it does feel odd to like finally have a position where you have peace and stuff like that after you don't have peace for like years. I don't know if maybe like she was relating to that, but there are just some people that they really feel bad for other people. Like it's not just nothing to them. They feel very bad that other people go through stuff. I don't necessarily see it as like some kind of spiritual thing or some kind of energy thing. It's just there are people who have very very strong empathy. They have very very strong empathy, and when they see, I guess, that someone is going through something, it'll start to like burn on them. It'll really start to wear on them. And she kind of started crying because I mentioned that. But for her, like, she was crying because, like, I guess she was happy that after, like, a lot of... I didn't mention stuff to her. I don't like the trauma dump and tell people everything about myself. But she was happy that I had a place to be at peace, you know. And so when, my roommate was talking to me about stuff like that, I kind of just mentioned it's like, you just have to learn how to take one step at a time. A lot of us can come and we can just feel broken. And the truth of the matter, folks, is it's okay to feel broken. Like, life's unpredictable. You can be fine one minute and life can just completely shatter you. You can have your plans and stuff and life can just shatter you. I didn't expect to lose a house after years of being miserable, at a house with no electricity and barely any water. And I won't go into details, but I'm just letting you know, like, that was how we lived for most of my middle school and high school, you know. And then on top of that, when I finally had graduated, I had hoped that, there would be some opportunities. We then lost that house, you know. We lost that house and we were just we tried our hardest to fight for that house and we lost it. Life just, it can just come, it can come out of nowhere with haymakers. And prepared as you might think that you are for them, like, there's just no way to prepare all the time. Because a lot of times it's not always about what you did or didn't do. It's just you get screwed. You live in a world where they have essentially made it so easy for them to just snake their way up to you and just screw you over. And then when you try and fight back, well, F you. The fine print says, So I kind of just mentioned to her that, you kind of just have to learn to take one step at a time. And even if you feel broken now, same thing that I tell you guys, like, there's life beyond your pain, you know. Yes, happiness is temporal. Joy is temporal, I'm not going to lie to you. There aren't going to be moments where you're always going to be fulfilled and motivated, you know. There will be moments where it feels very tough, and I'll go ahead and openly admit it, like, there's plenty of days where I just want to sit down in bed and not be, like, dealing with the wage gauge and not deal with the freaking foot cramps and the nonsense and stuff like that. There are plenty of days where I do it and I feel unmotivated, but I get up and do it anyway. Not because I, feel like I'm obligated to, but because I know that the sacrifice that I'm making now is going to benefit later. I think this is why it's important for you to kind of have goals and stuff like that, because one of the things that she mentioned is she just doesn't know what she wants to do. And I don't think that's a trait unique to her. I think that's a trait that a lot of us are dealing with. With knowledge, I'm not going to say comes responsibility, but it can become burdensome when you have a certain amount of knowledge, And a lot of us know in this generation just how effed up things are. We really know. I don't mention this all the time as, like, justification to my life, but I think about these population rates and how people keep whining about them. And I'm like, if you want the population rates to go up, pay people enough to make a living, number one, and then stop effing them over with the economy. But you won't do that. If you did pay people enough to make a living, you just raise the stuff, and then you get pissed that people weren't popping out kids. We have learned by living the way that we did because of our parents, right? We have learned that, listen, it's not just enough to pop out a kid. We need to give them a quality life. No one's saying that they need to have a silver spoon in their mouth and they need to be on a yacht, but this whole struggle crap, you just barely getting by, that's not something that you give to your children. Because all it really does, and let's just be real, we're living proof of it right now, is show them that, listen, I'm working myself to death, and what do I have to show for it? And I think this is why a lot of people are, trying so hard to get into crypto, to get into stocks. They're trying to get out of here. And I'm quickly believing more and more that if you do want some kind of family life, if you do want something great. It seems like the best choice that you have is to make your money here in first world countries and then go live in third world countries. Now, that's still pretty freaking risky considering, what's going on in a lot of third world countries, but what other choice do you have presented to you? You know, maybe you could try and live in, a more modern country that's still cheaper, but, there are still going to be challenges about that too. Like let's say that I decided to, I don't know, freaking move to Japan or something like that, right? Yes, it's cheaper to live in Japan and the food's better and stuff, but there's no denying that, it's a very alien environment towards a lot of foreigners and stuff like that. And even if you do speak Japanese, and I don't just say this as a neba, I'm just saying in general, like, there are issues that you're going to deal with there. And so a lot of people are looking at that and they're going, listen, overall, we want fulfillment. We want to feel contentment. And it's so difficult to find that these days. It's so difficult. And so instead they chase, whatever makes them happy. Whether it's sex, whether it's drugs. But I don't really like thump on people telling you, that you shouldn't do it. But there are consequences for doing it. You chase too much sex and stuff, and maybe you end up with a kid. Maybe you end up with a freaking STD. You chase a whole bunch of drugs, you end up pretty effed up, man. Because you're always chasing the next high, and, you just got to be careful about what you choose to indulge in, But the reason I wanted to share that was because I hope that you guys in this space understand something, I get how effed up the world is. And don't ever deny that it's effed up, guys. Don't accept it for what it is. I know it hurts to do sometimes, but accept it for what it is. Acceptance does not mean you like it. You just have to acknowledge what it is so you can navigate, right? You have to. You have to. I don't see the world as beautiful. I think that there is beauty in it, but it is not beautiful. And that is one perspective that I have come to, over the many experiences that I have experienced in life, that I will not change. I will not change my stance on that no matter what. Even the things that you consider, beauty in it, there is a lot of effed up stuff going on. We don't really live in this beautiful, wonderful, happy-go-lucky world that people like to claim that we do, But we do have to learn how to navigate it with a clear head, and most of all, in my opinion, personally, and even if you feel, that you want to disagree with this, I think we need to navigate it with humanity. And one of the biggest things that I think when I think humanity, even though I see humanity as a very, 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 very effed up species, is the ability of choice. There isn't another creature that we know of so far, that has the ability to actively choose. We are not just instinct. We have the ability to choose. Now, what we do with that choice, is up to us. And unfortunately, we live in a world that shows us that most people are going to choose to do some very effed up stuff. But for those who do choose to do effed up stuff, we can also choose to do not so effed up stuff. Whether it's just a gesture, like I said, I didn't have to sit there and let her cry on me. And I know in this case, we were like, hey, listen, like she could say something. And yeah, you're right. But truth of the matter is, you can't 100% avoid them if that's what you're going to try and do. Yes, there is effed up stuff that can happen, but, I've lived amongst them all my life, so at this point, I just say, whatever happens, happens, Seriously. But I display, or I at least try to show humanity, especially when people show humanity to me, There are so many effed up people in this world, and so I try my hardest to not be one of them, It doesn't mean that I'm perfect. It doesn't mean that I'm some saint. I don't see myself as a good person. I don't think I'm a saint. I'm just me. You know, I'm just me. That's all it is. There's no fancy story about me. I'm just another person on this rock, bro. Don't have all the answers. I just got eyes to see. And when I do see people, again, displaying humanity or people hurting, depending on the person, you know, like, because if you're a piece of crap and you're hurting, then, you know, hey, you go ahead and hurt by yourself, because I remember how you were doing other people. But, you know, if it's just someone who's on some hard times, you know, I don't mind, even if it's just being the ear that they listens to them for a second, you know. But yeah, I kind of wanted to share that because that was quite something, you know. And I want to make this very clear. No, I am not trying to court this chick. No, I am not going to use this vulnerability as a way to, like, you know, slither my way, you know, into her interests or anything like that. I'm not going to try and do that. You know, there's a lot that can go wrong with that, number one. And number two, you guys know my stance is on relation craps, as I like to call them. I'd rather just pay, and to be real, I have found a regular that I am probably going to be seeing quite a bit of from now on. Like, whenever I get paid, I might, even if it's just 30 minutes, I might dedicate a little bit of that to her. So, and that will go ahead and handle all of the tension and stuff like that, and that'll be that. Because, yeah, I'm not out here trying to fall in love and bullcrap like that. I don't buy into that. But just because I don't buy into that doesn't mean that I want to see people get screwed over who don't have it coming. Now, if they do have it coming, that's different. But, yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys because I do think that all of us should try and remember a bit of our humanity. Specifically towards those who, again, are deserving of humanity being showed to them. This is not for just anyone, you know, like there are people that need to get got. Let's just be real. And when they get screwed over, leave them right there. Leave them right there. Some of them do have to just wallow. They deserve it. Absolutely. You know, I'm not some freaking comic book character. You know, not by a long shot. So there are some people that deserve it, but there are also plenty of people that just kind of need to be shown a bit of humanity. So, you know, try and be that person if you can sometimes. No one's saying that you need to, like, hear everybody's story or be a Naruto, but, you know, if you know that someone's hurting and you can relate, man, let them know. You know? Just let them know. But as always, thank you all for watching. I hope you guys are hanging in there. And I'll say this one more time, considering this kind of video, there's life beyond your pain, guys. So, let's just take it one day at a time. God bless. I'll see you guys in the next one.